everybody. How are you doing? Welcome to our next episode of Scripting the Book, and we are going to talk about Dune. I've been looking forward to it for quite a while. So let's go around. We have a guest host with us today, and then we have our regular co-host, and we'll go around clockwise. Shanon, introduce yourself to the people.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Shanon. I'm right under the pen name SC Houston and have a YouTube channel under the same pen name of SC Houston, where I publish content about writing and self-publishing my book and my journey and what works and what doesn't work for me. Also, one half of the partnership for the AuthorTube Writing Conference, the first of its kind, coming to YouTube and the AuthorTube community in July of 2022. We're currently looking for speakers and guest speakers who would like to sign up to talk about writing and or publishing. And that's anything under the spectrum of publishing, whether cover design, editing, traditional publishing, self-publishing, anything under that umbrella we're looking for.
Other one, I'm Natalie Locke. I'm about to steal part of Shannon's intro because I realize I don't publicize this, but Natalie Locke is a pen name because I have written, trying to get published, a dark women's fiction, and if my work got wind of that, they might pull me aside and be like, "Do you need to talk to somebody?" And like, no, I'm figuring it out. So, just because I plan to continue to write dark things that are hard to talk about, I stuck with the pen name, and I also genre hop as well. So why change it? But it's still in the adult category thus far. We'll see what happens in the future. Never say never. But YouTube, Natalie Locke, TikTok, Writer Locke, Instagram, Writer Locke, Twitch, Natalie Locke. I'm everywhere. I'm not active everywhere, but I exist in those realms.
All right. My name is Morgan Lee. I have a YouTube channel here at the name Morgan Lee. Mainly, I've just been doing live streams lately. I'm streaming every day in April for Camp Nano. So if you need to get some sprints in, you can hang out with us over there. And that's about it.
Right. And I'm Ben Pick. I have an AuthorTube channel as Running to Write, where I give questionable writing advice every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm working on publishing my first novel. So hopefully that will come out in July is what I'm aiming for. So happy to be here.
Awesome. And you're on my channel. I'm Nia, the Vixen of Fiction, here on YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram. I currently, like everybody else, I'm running under my pen names. I've got a couple of them. And this one is also a pen name. I use my nickname and a pen name. So it's a lot of fun hanging out with, getting to know everybody. So come hang with us some. We all do like writing sprints and have different things on our channel. Everyone's linked below, so you can come check us out and hang with us for whether we're doing flash fiction or we're talking about our writing journey and all of the things that we have going on. Or just come write with us or read with us or when we do our productivity sprints. So we have a good time. And today I'm very excited. We are going to be talking about Dune. Richard's here. Hello, Richard. And Cool Gamer is here. And we're all just hanging out in the chat. And if you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and leave comments down in the comment box below. And I'll get to them. I usually check them every other day. So if you want to leave some comments and give us your thoughts on Dune and you're not here watching with us live, you can do that. We are going to start with Richard wants to know who DNFed, but we're not going to do the book first because the book is, of course, the completed first book, but the movie only covers the first half of the book. So we're going to start with the movie. So if you want to talk about the movie, but you haven't read the book yet, you'll know where to cut off. So we'll do the movie first. So anybody thoughts on the movie as I find the banners and start popping them up?
I felt the movie was pretty good. It was easy to kind of understand the setup. It wasn't like I was going into this going, oh, it's a romance. Like I knew it was sci-fi, and it definitely had that otherworldly feel to it. And I thought they did well with like the main character having these dreams. Really, dog? Having these dreams and stuff, and so they did good with their I like the cinematography. Let me put it that way. Like
Mhm.
I'm into that type of stuff, and I pay attention to those things. So, and then broad brushstroke, but overall, even the sets, the clothing, I thought they all conveyed. I almost got pulled out of the world with Jason Momoa, but that is not the movie's
That's
fault.
nobody's fault.
But it was a lot of, in my opinion, no names, and then you had someone who was well known. I'm like, wait a second,
Mhm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so
Yes, that
Agreed.
happens.
I
I
agree
was
with
not the biggest.
look of it was really good. I love
Yes.
the much different. It was much more beautiful compared to earlier things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't actually the biggest fan of this version. I agree completely that it looked stunningly beautiful. They had wonderful set designs. They had wonderful costumes. They had wonderful sound. But
Mhm.
the story that it told, and we can go into this much later. This is a lot more spoilery in it, but I felt like it was missing a lot. So I was less enthusiastic about the overall movie.
Yeah.
What I would say is that it starts off with the idea of people being oppressed, which actually talks to more of our time period versus how some of the other things have started off.
Yeah,
with Dune,
I
that's for
actually
sure.
like the way that it starts with because you're getting it from Chani's point of view and her side of things, their history versus getting
The
things
political.
from Paul and the I'm going to be mispronouncing names all over the place,
Me too.
but the Atreides, you're in the Harkonnen where you're getting more of their history. The movie is starting out with Charney and the Freeman, how this has been affecting them. So I like the way that it starts there. Again, I loved the cinematography. I know some people thought it was a little monochromatic, but it's exactly how I imagined it would be when you're talking about this just desert sand planet. I don't see how it would be anything other than that. So the way it looked beautiful to me. And I think that the promo leading up to it, I think they sold it because all of my kids wanted to watch it. They have no interest in reading the book at all, but they were way into it. They knew the characters. It had I forget his name from the Marvel universe. He's playing a bad
Oscar
guy in
Isaac?
it. Yes. Well, no, they had Oscar
that's Star Wars,
Isaac.
sorry.
They knew Oscar Isaac too.
Stellan
But
Skarsgård.
yeah, and they had Jason Momoa, of course, and I've been a fan of Jason Momoa since Stargate Atlantis. So, and then they had younger people. I think we all know Zendaya, but we don't all know the guy who played Paul. But the younger people know who he is. He's quite popular, and he was in Little Women, their version of Little Women. So there were like the younger generation was sold, I think, going in, and my kids watched it. They loved it. They watched it before me. And then we watched it as one of our family movie nights. So I think that they did a good job. And I asked them, I'm like, do you understand? And they're like, yeah, they understood on the level of what the movie was telling us. They understood what was going on. There's so much more that we can get into when we get to the book that if I said, well, what about this? They'd be like, what are you even talking about? Because it just wasn't there in the movie. But I think that for the condensed version of what we got, it was very understandable. So I think the movie streamlined it very well, I guess. But if you loved the book, I feel like you are going to feel like there were things missing.
See, I don't know why. I don't know if it's the movie's fault or just my fault, but it took me 3 different tries to get through the movie, and I don't know why. I don't know if it didn't catch my attention or if it was, I don't know what it was, but it took me 3 tries to finish the whole movie. But I agree with what everyone said. Like, it looked amazing. I loved like the sounds, the music, the costumes, everything was great. It was a beautiful movie. I don't know why it took me so long to like get into the story, and I still don't feel like I fully got like the gist of what was going on. yeah, I don't know.
I was gonna say, being your critique partner and knowing how you move through scenes, I can see why you would not have liked the Dune 2021 version, because there are very slow parts as they're trying to set the scene and for you to
Mhm.
understand like his visions and stuff. And it's so slow that even during those times, my mind started wandering.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It took, yeah, I just finished it this morning. So it's
But you
fresh.
finished it.
Yeah.
And Natalie, you also said you weren't quite a fan of the movie either.
Yeah, I mean, the movie was. I was expecting like it had its action packed, and I'm sure they bumped it up from the book and everything. But there was just certain parts where I'm just like, all right, got it. Dream is going on, and I will say there was one like where I was like, yeah, moment, and it was when the queen was talking with the servant, and the servant was like, oh, you know our language, like, and surprise, but just because I'm a big fan of like someone showing like you don't think they know the language and then it turns out they do, and it's a cool flex in my opinion.
So she's got some status, but she's not technically a queen. She's the duke's like paramour. And she's Paul's mom, so that's where her status comes from. But yeah, I could see how it would come across that she's the queen, or
yeah. And then there was like, I was just trying to think of how, because I admit I watched this movie like a month ago, but the situation that with the servant with the dagger and stuff, like that was one that captivated me, and it's stuck in my head the whole time.
Shout out, Mapes.
Yeah, I like I just like the way that they brought the film to life, and we'll get to it a little bit because some of us have seen the 1984 version. So we'll talk about that, but like the shielding was done really well, and just how certain things were able to penetrate through the shielding, how that was done. So it's like you could see that, okay, these blows aren't landing, that blow landed. You could see when that was happening. I think that they did a good job of bringing that to life. And the action scenes, I'm gonna go back to the Jason Momoa scene, but that was really cool. Please, if you haven't watched, you're going to get spoiled. So I liked Duncan, Idaho anyway in the book, but his death is told. It's told what happens and everything, but just seeing that whole Jason Momoa moment where he's like does the thing with the sword and he's gonna go out and he just starts taking out these guys, and then slowly as they start getting him and he's going down, and like those are the kind of action scenes I'm like, I like that. Like when everything's exploding, I'm like, things are just exploding. Okay, there's a lot of exploding. But when you get more of the one-on-one and you get like one character going out with a bang, I'm like, I'm here for that kind of stuff. So that, and not just because it was Jason Momoa. I'm sure it could have been any of them. And I would have enjoyed
Patrick
that.
Stewart?
Yeah, see, I like Patrick Stewart, and he was
Duncan, Idaho in the 84 version.
Oh, was he Duncan, or was
he was Gurney?
He
was Gurney.
Oh, sorry,
yeah,
Gurney.
he was Gurney.
Yeah,
we'll get to it. But I did like the scene. When we get to the 84 version, we'll talk about it. But yeah, I forget the name of the guy who was Duncan, Idaho, but we'll talk about that. Because three of us did see the 84 version. But yeah, the way that they did the Duncan, Idaho scene in this one, I liked it. I just like the way that he escapes, and he's flying around the thing and the beam is trying to get him, and it's like wrecking everything. I'm like, everything really gets destroyed. It's awesome. But yeah, I like that more than just like bombs dropping and screaming and just random mayhem running. I like when we get some action in the battles where we're focusing on people. And I liked the way that the movie did. Oh gosh, see, I'm sorry. There's so many names and I'm on allergy medication. So give me a minute. Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. If I'm saying that right? Okay, so he's like this big, mean, grotesque thing. I just like the way that they toned it down in the movie, and they just focused on, this is just a bad dude who, they're in the warring houses. I just like the way that they did his character in the movie. And when we get to the book, we'll talk about some of this kind of maybe negative type stereotype tropes, but I understand what was trying to be done with that character when you're trying to make a character just the absolute worst, So
Mhm.
I think he was probably more grotesque in the book, but he just his mean, brutal, that came across really well without some of maybe the negative tropey type things. And some of the more gross aspects that maybe we didn't need. I think he came across well in the movie that way. And anybody else? I'm going to try and look at the comments really quick.
I'm trying to hold off on my thoughts for where they can fit best,
Yes.
but
Mhm.
I agree that I had a lot of issues with the battle scene as well, but for different reasons. And this kind of has to do a lot with that we are told a lot within the movie, but we're never actually shown it. So they go on and on about how the Sardaukar and the Atreides are the best fighting forces in the universe. And when we actually see them fighting, it's nothing really special. In fact, the Atreides use bad tactics.
Mhm.
Like, yes, they are caught off guard, and it's fully understandable that they aren't in the best positions, but what they do with what they have, it's disappointing in terms of tactics.
Yeah. But I think that they did a good job with the Freeman, though. I'm like, they really come across as like, these guys can they've got skills, but
Yep.
it's their homeland also. They've learned how to really work around the worms. Oh, the worms. I love the worms.
And see, I like the older version better.
The older version did a good job with the worms too, but I'll tell you why when we get to what a couple of times where the worms in the older version were like, really? But yeah, the worms look good. The worms look good. And I liked that we had more scenes in the movie with Paul and his dad. That was I don't think we got that much as much of that in the book. So the scenes like they go to Paul's grandfather's grave and he's killed by a bull. It's really kind of ridiculous, but this is what what happens to him. So we get some more kind of a little bit more heartfelt scenes with Paul and his dad, where we're going to get those with Paul and Jennifer, especially with everything that Paul's going through, because Paul was not supposed to be a boy. Jennifer has abilities as part of the Bene Gesserit that she chose to have a son because her partner wanted a son. She did it for his lineage, where she was supposed, for her people, she was supposed to have a daughter because her child is foretold to be this special person. And Paul has all these abilities and she's training him, and he's, freaking out about some of the things that he can do. And he's having this dream about this girl that he's never met. And he has to do this thing where he puts his hand in a box, because I don't think that they're believing that Paul's going to be the one, because Paul's a boy. And he, if he pulls his hand out of the box, no matter what happens, then she's going to basically kill him. And she's like, he's been trained up. He's got way too much power to not be who he's supposed to be. So he passes the test and she believes he's human. And we're only getting half the movie, so I don't want to say too much. The movie's only half the book. So she's like, okay, maybe, but she's still kind of skeptical that Paul can be this great foretold chosen one, because it is a chosen one trope, and she's just not quite buying it. But here we are. It's like, thank you, Jennifer. This is a situation you put us in. We're going to deal with it. And Paul's going through some things because these abilities are manifesting, but he passes the test.
I just find it hilarious that when powers come to fruition, it's always when someone's like around puberty, like they're still going through it. It's like powers are always a semblance of your body's changing.
Right.
Yep.
What I'd say is, like, touching on that, what you said, that more scenes between him and his father, the revelation of information in the 2021 movie, they did switch it around. They did have it come from his parents versus other people, which I thought really helped cement that bond between him and his parents.
I think so too. Yep. So I feel like a lot of things were done right for what we got, in, did they do 2 hours? The movie was real
2.5 hours.
2.5
Yeah.
hours. Yeah.
It was long.
And still didn't touch on everything. So it's pretty incredible. So we're going to talk more about the movie because we want to do more spoilery things. So we're going to hop into the book and give our thoughts on the book, and then we can go ham on spoiling everything and comparing and the whole nine. So thoughts on the book. I know people want to know who read it, who DNF'd it. So I will start by saying I read this back when I was in high school. And I remember at the time that I read it, it was very fascinating. I hadn't read a lot of things like this. And it's one of the things that let me know I also like sci-fi, because I knew I liked fantasy. And this is it's sci-fi, but it's got very fantasy elements in it with Paul and his powers and, the spice giving them the ability for space travel. So it really is blending it. And it's also a little bit dystopian because you have the freemen living on this planet, that the colonizers are just coming in and, trying to push them out and take the goods from the land. So there's a lot going on. And I was the first thing that was like, oh, this is very interesting. And I don't remember how long it took me to read it, but I just remember every time I would get a chance, I'm like, oh yeah, what happens next? And trying to find good places to stop because I was very busy when I was in high school with all schoolwork and regular work and activities. But I just remember it was that book that I just couldn't wait till I got a chance to read the next chapter. So my reread didn't go quite as well because I feel like I didn't have the time to get into it. And I felt like I was skimming over I'm like, oh, boring part, skipping over things. And I'm like, I know it's important and I need to know, what was going on between these families, and a lot of I call it magic, but a lot of the stuff with the Bene Gesserit, I'm like, I know I'm skimming some of these things, but what was most interesting to me were the relationship parts, particularly with Jennifer's relationship with the Bene Gesserit and then Jennifer's relationship with her son. And, so I found myself skimming to get to those parts when I had time. And I'm just like, I'm not able to get into it. But I think it was a me thing, because now I actually want to reread it and I don't have time. So it's one of those things. I've become more of a mood reader than I think I was back when I was in high school. I would just read whatever as soon as I got a chance, I would just, gobbling things up. And now I'm not in the mood for that. Don't want to read it. Save that for later. So now I'm in the mood to read it and I don't have time to read it. So that's where I'm at. Shanon, how was your read of Dune?
So the first time I read it, I was 11. And so that was like 30 years ago for me. And I remember thinking then, I was like, okay, some of this I don't understand, like the political stuff. And I did skip over that then when I was younger, because I was like, I don't get that. I was like you. I wanted to get to the relationships. I was also interested in the powers. That was what interested me at 11-year-old. So I picked it back up knowing I was coming on the show, thinking, okay, I want to, redo this. And I think now reading it, I did not DNF it. I read it until the point where the first movie ended for 2021's version. And it's kind of hard to say how I felt about it at this point, because now I'm reading it like a writer. There was so much exposition and head hopping. I mean, you would have one page and you could be in 3 different people's POVs on one page. So you really had to keep that straight. And sometimes the prose and the dialogue was enough to keep you straight to understand what was going on. But there was a couple pages where I stopped and wait, whose head am I in? Who's feeling this? it was a little bit harder to get into it, but I did force myself through it. And by the time I got to that mark where the movie ended, I really wanted to continue. So, but I'm holding off on doing that.
Yeah. Oh, and thank you, Shannon. I keep saying Jennifer because I have a friend named Jennifer, and it's Jessica. Jessica. I've got to get it in my head. Okay. All right. Let's go. How did it go, Natalie?
So I decided to watch the movie first, just because normally, as people are able to, they usually are able to read books before the movie comes out or the show or what have you. Mm-hmm. And since I was one of the lucky few that hadn't read the book yet, I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch the movie first. Watch the movie, which I think added to how far I was able to get in the book because of how many characters there are. I was actually able to start picturing people. But I DNF'd that thing after chapter 5. Out. Like, first time reading was like done. No. And I will be honest, I became that person that, because everyone talks about, hey, don't read a book and then return it because that's bad on the author. It was an Audible token for the month. I got to chapter 5. It's not like I finished the whole thing. I returned it and I got my coin back.
I got your token back.
So I was able to get another book through Audible for the month. But because otherwise, if I actually finished it and I didn't like it, I would have. I'm going to be honest. I'm not one to send it back. But I didn't even finish.
Yeah.
And also the only other reason why I'm okay with sending a book back is it is old. Okay, I think it got its royalties. It's not going to hurt.
Yeah, I think they're fine.
At the very end.
Just think about how much money you made from the movie or the family
right.
movie.
They're good.
I think the movie profits covered what me returning a book on Audible is worth. So I'm just, if anybody wants to come at me with that, I got my reasons. If they're not good enough for you, well, fine. You can downvote my videos if that makes you feel better.
Don't do that.
I said my videos. I didn't say videos on the photo.
Don't download your videos though, because you know what? DNFing is legit. It happened. It's legit.
Yeah. Like same with the same mindset I have with like beta readers and stuff. When they come to me, they either come to me and say, "Hey, I can't finish," or they just stop. I don't bug them if they just stop. I'm like, cool, it's on you. Like I'm not gonna like force feed my story down your throat.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I got to chapter 5, which was good because I did get to see the interaction between the mom and that servant back and forth, which I remember from the movie, and that was about it. And then what I remember from the 1984 version and the new movie. The only thing I remember from the 1984 version was the guy spitting on the floor. And I was just like, I walked into my parents watching, and I'm like, what the hell? And then my mother explained to me how it was a sign of respect and I'm in this world. And I was like, oh, okay. And that stuck with me for years. And then that was the main reason I watched the new one. I'm like, I got to see this person spit on the floor. Let's go. Sign of respect. And I'm like, oh, there it is. Cool. They kept it.
We lost him for a second. We'll get him back. He doesn't want us to tell everybody if he's DNF.
But yes, I did DNF. Now,
Morgan?
the question is there more than one person who DNF'd?
Yes, is there more than one person? How'd it go, Morgan?
I also DNF'd the book around like chapter 4. I think for the same reasons it took me so long to get into the movie. It took me that long to get into the book, and I was just not interested. And I could not, I don't know, I just could not get interested in, like, I had no desire to keep listening to the book. So I listened around chapter 4, I think. Yeah.
Was there anything within the first 4 chapters that you were like, maybe I'll hang on? And then before you were like, nah, that's it. Or was it just like, were you feeling the no?
I think I was feeling the no. I was trying really hard just for the show so that I could have something to offer and talk about. But like, yeah, I just
See, this is valuable though. So when we first decided that we were going to do this, I knew that some people, we'd pick something where maybe you're into the book and don't like the movie and you just quit on the movie, and it's legit. Like this is what we're talking about. What was it that made it a or what made it so that you loved one but not the other, or hated them both, or
tolerated one, hated the other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll watch it because people are going to talk about it, but for me, honestly, it's just too many characters, too much backstory, and it's like you and I were talking about, Mia, is that when this book came out and when Lord of the Rings trilogy came out, people weren't as accessible to look at pictures of the desert. They may have never seen it in person, and so because we're in an age where I could easily look up any crazy shape or whatever, I don't need the describe every single darn grain in the desert to me. Okay, I don't need it.
Yes,
and give us some credit on backstory of characters. Just say it's his mom. That's it. All right, I don't need to know. Like, unless you're trying to go against and be like it's his mom by birth only, then we're like, okay, well, what's the backstory here? Why is there conflict? But if you just say mom, we're going to assume there's some maternal instincts at play here. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter.
There were certainly different writing conventions back then when this book was written.
Yeah.
And how was it for you then?
So I finished the book, and Richard actually has a question about how many of us did finish the book. It sounds like 3 out of the 5 of us did. 2 of us DNF'd it. So that's the official numbers. But I recognize that it is a very dated and dense book. But one of the things I did appreciate in it, and this greatly extended how many words were in there, is that it shows us a scene and then gives us context for why certain people are acting a certain way. And I recognize for Natalie that is terrible in an audio format. Like it would be like listening to a history lecture, which is just the most boring way I could think of conveying all this information.
I had history teachers that made it interesting. Like, I remember Abraham Lincoln was being berated by a woman, and she said, if I was your wife, I would poison the food I cook for you. And he went, ma'am, if I was your husband, I'd eat it. I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because of my history teacher. That's the history I want. Don't give me 407 years ago.
Right. So it's somebody doing a history lesson by reading slides. And I think if any of you listeners out there are going to go through with this, it is better to read the book than it is to listen to it. And you can definitely go ahead and skim, whatever parts that you don't want to. But I enjoyed what I read. I could see a lot of promise in it, and there is a lot of dated way of telling a story, which is slow and methodical, but the actual story underneath was fairly interesting in terms of, the Messiah complex and where it goes as it follows Paul.
Yeah, I gotta agree. Just for me, the story itself is fascinating. So even
I'm sure pitching it was like, yes, write it.
Oh, but I also hold nothing against anybody who wants to DNF it or return their tokens or whatever, because I fully understand this is not for everyone.
Yeah, I think that it's one of those books that maybe could, I don't want to say could use a written update, but maybe a kind of
condensed version.
Like Princess Bride had an abridged version. Maybe get an abridged version of this one.
Where it's nice and condensed, and you like modernize it, write it for a modern sci-fi fantasy audience, where all of those details that they tell us current writers now, don't put all that in your book. They're like, leave all that stuff out. Trust your audience that they're smart enough to figure some things out, and don't do the prologues. And they tell us all these things now because this is how we write and read things now. But back then, I'm like, I need these details. Like, so when they'll say something and then you get the background to that, I'm like, oh, I literally would be reading it like, oh, that's interesting. But this was like in the early 90s. when I was reading it. So now I'm just like, oh, I don't need to know. I'll skip that, skip that. Yeah, skipping there. You know, I don't need all that, but I'm still interested in this story itself, you know. So
Yeah, because I read the Spark Notes version. It sounds like a great, like a great storyline. Like it sounds really interesting, but it was just it was too much.
I
Like
should have done that. That was genius.
exposition. Yeah, I have the Spark Notes pulled up here too. But yeah, I read through that just to give me like an overview of like what was happening. Yeah.
that's actually a good idea. I'm going to need to do that too. And I wonder because there's some older books that I have kept reading and I'll put them on my regular reread. And I think that that's how people tell me because people are like, oh, how can you read Jane Austen? Like they like the adaptations, but they're like, but reading it. And I'm like, well, I guess she did write kind of, it does read, it's kind of old fashioned, but because I read them regularly, I don't notice it. You know, but I reread them probably once a year at some point. So I haven't caught on that it's super outdated because it still feels like just this thing I read all the time. But I think it happened with Robin, one of Robin Hobbs' books that I went back to reread and I'm like, oh, this feels a little dated. And it was only like what, 20 years ago, maybe. You know what I mean? So I can see how if I don't reread something regularly, that the further I am removed from when I first read it, the more dated it feels when I go back to do a reread. So I feel like that, and I think that happened with me and Tolkien too, because I still love all Lord of the Rings, but I'm not like in the fandom. Like the fandom is like reading these things constantly. They'll read them over and over. They'll read every version. Exactly. You know, and so I'm like, that's probably what keeps it to where they don't feel that datedness that some of us who are more, it's been 25, 30 years since we read it, that we're feeling like, oh, this is a little hard. I want to skip a lot of this stuff, you know? They're like, but there's details in there that you need to know, but they're talking about it with the fandom group. So fandom groups are fun. I like to pop in them sometimes and just like, I don't even remember this thing that you're talking about. What page was that on? You know, just they can hone in on the fine details. So fandom groups can be a lot of fun just to see the things that they notice that like, I read this whole book and I didn't even catch that at all. Robin Harab, let me pull up the comment from Richard. Our two authors that put me on fantasy. Oh no! You weren't into the Assassin's Apprentice? Come on, it was good stuff. But I in general, I like sci-fi fantasy, but I could see if you don't, that this would be like if this is not already a genre that you like, I could see that even making it more difficult, especially if you're really into contemporary. There is nothing contemporary about this. I'm like, yeah.
Like my sci-fi book that I wrote deals with parallel universes, so the universes are technically contemporary or within like the past 100 years because of it. The time period changes depending on which universe you're in.
Oh, see, yeah, that's a good way to get that. I like that. All right. We're gonna
Yeah, it's getting lively in the chat.
Let me see. Yeah. Okay. I just like the story. Again, it's so dense and he's very, very wordy. Tolkien is very, very wordy, but the story itself, I'm like, you've got elves and dwarves and, you know, I'm like, yeah.
So I like the movie better.
Yeah. And that's one where I've got my things on the top shelf. I too enjoy the movie better. Yeah, I'm like, I have no desire to go back and reread it. The Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. Like, and it's so much. I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to reread those, but I'm glad that he wrote it because it gave us an awesome movie. We would not have it without it.
Well,
people are gonna, like fandom people, when they watch this on the rewatch, are going to come for us. Like, I'm like, but sorry. But, you know, I did read it when I was younger, so I enjoyed it, you know. but no.
That's the
desire
thing.
to
You
read
did
it.
read it, okay? Like, I haven't read it. Like, and I wasn't
I
even
haven't
smart
read it
enough to
either.
grab the Spark Notes version. I just went, nope. Give me my coin back. Like, I mean,
Yep. You know, it'd be like
next time I
that
should do
sometimes.
Spark Notes.
But yeah, I so yeah, do you want to talk about the 1984 version?
Yes. So
I want to hear about the difference between the worms now.
okay.
Well, the graphics alone.
The graphics alone.
Yeah.
So the worms looked really good in the 1984 version. When they open their mouth, they've got the things that come out. All of that looked really good. There's just one part where the worm's mouth is closing on it, and it literally looks like it's going like a mechanical.
It has a
That's
tripart mouth.
Yes. So that's the only thing about the worms that I will complain about is that it looked very just the closing of the mouth, and there's a third part, so it's like I don't know how to do that with my hands, but it's more like, but it looked incredibly mechanical when they were closing. But the whole way that it was going through the sand and the opening of the mouth, that's
Yes.
that's what I pictured, and it's very similar to the way that they did it in the current movie. So I have no
I think
complaints.
it's scarier.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
actually.
Because you got to see this big worm come out and then open its mouth, where in
The movie, I think they
2021,
were.
it's already open when
Yeah,
you see
the
the
movie
worm.
it was already open. Yep.
Yeah, and I was like, that
That
doesn't
is
seem
true.
very scary.
Yeah.
Well, the part where
just
they're
the size of
dropping
it
into
is.
Yeah.
yeah, the drop part where they're dropping into it when it's coming up and they're being absorbed, that is still kind of weird. But yeah, the whole idea of the worm closing them in, that was kind of scary. So I agree. But the whole 1984 version, like they leaned into some of the things that I think the 2021 version tried to move away from. So one of the characters, he is like he's obese. Like I feel like they just lean too much into the tropes and that didn't age well. So he's like really like drooling over his nephew, who is Sting. Sting did look good. So he's like kind of like got this weird obsession thing, and it's like none of that aged well. Just but he was meant to be really, really grotesque. And so he's got boils and things, and he's eating really like every time he came on the screen, I literally want to go, I don't want to look.
Yeah.
Like it was so gross the way that he was done. I'm like, I can't even. So I think that's the way it was. They wanted it to look, but I just was like, ugh.
Well, the thing that they picked up from the book, right, where it says pedophilia, and because he went after young boys, and that's like a trope that signifies the bad guy, which does not age well. So I'm glad they took that out of the modern movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Same thing with the Fremen being poorly conveyed Middle Eastern tropes, which they didn't do in the 2021 version. So thankfully they changed how the book was written. They changed how the 1984 version portrayed it. But
yeah,
even as dated as the 1984 version is, I did really enjoy the movie for starters because it told a complete story.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the same.
Yeah, because
Go.
I was gonna say there's a lot that happens, but I think that because they want to do the current one in two parts, hopefully we'll get some of the things that we missed. Hopefully they'll pick up on some of the things that we lost in the book, just because they were trying to condense it and get it into that first part of the movie. So there's more things that I think you were saying that are in the 84 version that we totally missed in the 2021 version that we got from the book.
Well, I mean, spoiler for my thoughts up ahead, but the 1984 version told a complete story. The characters had complete arcs. Mm-hmm. It didn't hamstring itself is probably the best way to put it.
So did the 1984 version show the whole book?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And they also do show more importance about the spice. I mean, you kind of get the spice is important in the 2021 version, but you see how it's needed for folding space and travel. It is the key to everything. You kind of they kind of just touch on that a little bit in the 2021 version.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're like, why is it so important that they mine the spice? And in the 2021, you're like, okay, it's just this thing that they need. But in the book and in the movie, they detail they can't space travel without it. Everybody wants it. The person who's in charge of the company that's harvesting it, it's a big freaking deal. And dealing with the Fremen is a big deal. But the Fremen aren't as strong in the book or in the 84 version. So when you get to the 84 version, they do look a little bit more like cowering, and it's really Paul is like the savior that comes in, and I'm going to teach you how to use the voice. And the voice is a power that Paul has. So, and he's like, I'm going to teach you how to ride these worms, that even though you guys have lived on this planet all this time with these worms, and so there's a lot of weird scenes where they're riding the worms, and there's like a group of them, and it's just they're all going to something down. There's funny things, but I mean, in 84, I'm sure I didn't watch the movie till 90. I think someone had it on VHS for us, so we were able to see it. So I didn't get to actually see it in 84. If I just saw it in 84 when I was really, really little, or in the 80s when I was really little, I would have been probably been like, oh, cool. But by the time I saw it, it was already the 90s, and I was like, some of this looks kind of funny. But they were trying some things. They had a $40 million budget, and yeah, they were trying some things.
And definitely too, like the cast is mostly all white. Like Dr. Yui, he's not white, and they put a white male in his place. It's just I'm glad that part changed, and made it more diverse for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into some of the changes, and then we can just talk about general thoughts all around from we can hop around. So there you guys have it. For each segment, spoiler free, for semi spoiler free for each thing. This is we're going ham now. So I liked that, like you said, that Dr. Yoon was a person who was Asian descent, and I just like the more diversity. I know a lot of people don't like that. They, when it comes to sci-fi and fantasy, they don't like a lot of diversity. I'm the total opposite. Give me all the diversity.
Yeah.
Especially when someone's writing a book, they're usually writing characters from perspectives that they know. So sometimes they don't diversify in the book. But once you're getting to the big screen, whether it's TV or movie, these people should know how to add diversity without it feeling or seeming forced. And especially at this point in time, I think maybe in the 90s and the early 2000s, maybe it would seem a little bit forced, but there's nothing that seemed forced about what we were watching. And it just seemed perfectly natural. I didn't look at any character and be like, why are they this? Or, you know what I mean? Or I just don't look at TV like that anyway, but I'm also, I'm also Black. So, for me, seeing diversity, that's just everyday life. It's not. So I liked that. I liked the change of the other doctor. Gender swap. I thought that was Kynes. That was a great choice. I thought the actress did a good job. Again, things like that don't bother me when you're adding more diversity, as it does when you're taking out diversity. Bothers me more.
I have to say, I don't normally like gender swaps because usually gender has a lot to do with that role. But Dr. Kynes, the role, it could have been either male or female. So she having a gender swap to me was fine. It worked.
Yeah, I didn't see any issue with that one there either. The gender one, it's gotta work.
Yeah, and there was I was watching a video on it, and the girl made a comment about it. If Dr. Kynes, we're in spoiler territory, right?
Yeah, we're in full spoilers. Go for it.
If Dr. Kynes had or had some conversation or some scenes mixed with Chani or however you say her name, then it might have been different, because Dr. Kynes is the parent of Chani. And so a mother's relationship to a daughter is different than a father's relationship to a daughter. But because those two never crossed paths, it didn't make any difference then that the gender was swapped.
We only know that now. Okay, so this would be her mom. This is Chani's mom instead.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for anybody who DNF'd or didn't know. So that's their connection. Let me think. What else? There were. I think
the dinner scene.
The dinner scene. Yeah. So there's a big dinner scene that's not in either one of the movies, and it's in the book. But I just don't see how they would have had time for it.
Right. Oh, it was. Sorry.
I was gonna say it was a dense scene because there was a bunch of politicalness to that scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the pivotal scenes in the book, because it shows how everyone interacts with each other and what all the underlying political factions are. So it worked perfectly in the book. And I don't know. I mean, I can understand why they took it out of the movie, because it wouldn't have come off nearly as well unless you have somebody like the Mentat who is a human computer. Unless he's sitting there telling you what everything means, I don't know how you could convey that all on the big screen. Yeah. So it makes sense that it was cut. But it does feel like the movie is worse off for not giving us a chance to show us all of that.
Yeah.
And the Mentats. They took the Mentats.
The Mentats that, we don't get to know what they are.
No.
So you see the scene where the guy's eyes turn white and he starts computing, and then he comes back, but we don't know we don't actually get to know exactly who or what they are. Yeah. So my kids didn't know what that was. I'm like, do you know what that? And I'm like, but you saw them. There's only two with Paul possibly having these abilities too, because Paul is special, and Paul is something else other than what they thought he would be. So
in the book too, Paul is told that he's been trained as a Mentat, and and his dad asked him, "Do you want to continue your training?" And so I think that's important to Paul's character and his power, what he's able to figure out from different. Wherever he goes, he's looking at it as a Mentat and as a Bene Gesserit. So that all goes into his character.
Yeah. Oh, and the scene where Paul finds out that his dad has died is so long in the book. And he's very much more mechanical about it. Like, I should be sad about this, but I'm just taking this information in. Where I feel like in the 2021 version, he was a little bit more emotional just about the whole situation, because him and Jessica are trying to escape and all of this stuff is happening, and then when they're in the tent and he's really like trying to come to grips with all it. I think it went much faster the way that it played out than the way it was reading, because I felt like that was one where it was a lot of detail, like that was a long chapter.
And I would say in the 1984 version, they kind of followed the book a little more closely on that scene, but they didn't draw it out. But he did wonder, why do I feel emotionless about this? And that was a character change, just like character change they made there. They made him more emotive in the newer version versus the older version, where I saw the older version that he was like in shock. That's what I thought.
That's a good point. That is a good point. Should I go back and rewatch the older version? Probably not going to.
That's 2.5, 3 hours depending on the version. So no judgment if you do or don't.
There you go.
I have to say, I actually felt more from the 1984 version scene, because he is like thinking, why don't I feel anything? And his mom is like, she's crying and she's saying no, and versus where the scene we get with 2021, he's more emotive, and the mother, he's like, don't touch me. You said you made me a freak. And I just didn't think that played as well for me. It didn't pull on my heartstrings as much for the death of the father as it did in the 1984 version.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just going to try and get through a couple of these comments really quick.
So fun fact about Richard's comment right there. The first time I watched this, I was on an airplane, and the flight landed with like 20 minutes left. So I the first time I watched this, I missed the first 20 minutes of it. And so I had to go back and find a way to watch those last 20 minutes. And then I watched it through the full time with my watch party. But yeah, I completely agree how those last 20 minutes really don't add anything to the story.
Another difference is Dr. Yui's death scene. It's different from the book to 1984 and 2021. Because in the book, he's using his skills as a mentat to see, when he talks about it, he's like, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to say something. And however the Baron replies, I'll know whether or not my wife is dead. And when he goes in there and the way the Baron replies, he's like, okay, I know Juana is dead, his wife Juana. And then he says, he has a line that he says in the book, which is, I wrote it down. Where is that? Oh, you don't know what I've gained from my wife. Basically, he tells Harkonnen that, guess what? Something's coming. So he, Vladimir knows something is coming. And so that line also appears in the movie, although he doesn't know if his wife is actually dead in the movie. He thinks his wife is still alive in the movie, where in the book, you're in his thoughts and he knows his wife is dead. Then in 2021 movie, he doesn't even say that line. So.
Yeah. I know that I appreciate the way that it played out in the movie, even though we are missing a little bit time-wise. I feel like if you knew that your wife was dead, would you still have killed, you know what I mean, or had captured him so that he would be killed? And I understand, given the gas tooth thing, I feel like when I read the book, I was like, why is he helping him if he knows that his wife is probably dead? Do you know what I mean? I kind of feel like I thought that when I was reading it. And so it did for me play out a little bit differently, because I feel like when you really doesn't know, he really believes that they've saved my wife, you know what I mean? It plays out a little bit different why he would betray people, where if it was 50-50, would you do all of this, because literally everything is
for revenge.
Yeah,
that's what they put in the 84 movie. They made it revenge. So, another thing that is different from the 1984 version in the book and the 2021 version, which I think was actually an improvement for the 2021 version, is that you don't know ahead of time that there's this political stuff going on, that the Duke is basically going to be dead. He's going to be killed. You know that almost in the first chapter, Duke Leto is going to die. His death is coming. You know that in the 1984 version. But in the 2021 version, if you've not seen the other versions or read the book, you don't know that Duke Leto is going to die.
Sure.
And yeah, we can talk about the hand in the box scene, because that is actually a change from, there's a slight modification in it from the book to the movie, which made it worse. So in that scene, he's got to keep his hand in the box to prove that he's not an animal, because an animal would flinch back and act instinctively, and he's got to overcome those instincts, even though he's suffering pain. And so in that scene, in the book, the entire time he's thinking, I will not fear is the mind killer, which is a really pivotal line. And what happens in the movie is that we're obviously on his head. In the 1984 version, there was a voiceover which worked. In the 2021 version, it cuts to outside, where we see his mother like whispering those words, and then cuts back to him and she'll say another sentence, and then cuts back to him and then she'll say another sentence. And that really breaks up what is such an important theme for the movie in a way which makes the entire experience kind of worse.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't remember, did she explain that was a nerve thing that they were doing in the 2021 movie? Because I couldn't remember that part. The Reverend Mother, did she say that was the pain was through nerves?
She tells him at the end. So when he releases his hand, she tells him that only,
he does still pull out his hand like, whoa, nothing happened. But yeah, so it's the Gum Jabbar. And this is the thing, when you read things before you actually know how they're pronounced, and then it sticks with you for for 20 years.
Harkonnen versus Harkonnen or whatever.
Yeah. So this is this test that they use, and yeah, it's weird. Sorry. It is weird, but it's a creative way to come up with an idea to do a test, because they talk about how, an animal will literally chew off their leg if they're trapped
Mhm.
in a trap, but eventually the chewed off leg is going to kill them also, so do you just endure the pain, or you psychologically, if someone's telling you you're going to be fine, but you're feeling pain. But I think it is very human that we will actually endure pain to do something important. Like people will go into a fire to pull out a pet or a child. You know what I mean? We know that people,
Women wear heels.
yes, I don't, but women do wear heels. I just embrace the shortness. But yeah, so yeah, we do do things that are painful. We endure things that are painful, if the other thing, the opposite thing is worse.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So she's telling him, if you take your hand out, you're going to die because I'm going to kill you. And it's like, oh, I guess I gotta leave my hand in here. It's like, endure a little pain or die. So yeah. Okay, so I think we got to those ones too. Go ahead, Shannon.
I would say there was one more that at the end, the fight scene where Johnny gives him the crease knife, and she basically says, that she doesn't. Well, she says basically she doesn't believe he's going to win, but that is a change from the book, because in the book she actually tells him how to defeat. And I'm trying to remember the guy's name that he was going against. Jameis.
Yeah, James.
Yeah, Jameis. That how to defeat Jameis. And in the book, she told him, watch out for his left, or he uses both hands to fight. And so Paul is ready for that in the book. When the knife changes hands, he's ready to counteract that. Where in the movie, she basically says, "You're gonna die."
Mm-hmm.
And Zendaya definitely needed more lines in this movie for how pivotal of a role she plays.
Yeah.
My kids were not happy about the.
I said the same thing. I was like, is she gonna say anything in this movie?
I'm like,
this is here.
Okay, so where I have to tell I tell my kids where it cuts off. Like most of her stuff is after that. So they're like, so then there's definitely a part 2. I was like, yeah, as long as it does well at the box office, I think you're gonna get the part 2. But yeah, like they were like, suspicious lack of Zendaya in this. My kids were not happy about.
And she was on the posters like she's a pivotal role too.
And all
and
of
they
Yep, she's in all of the previous. Yeah. Yep.
You expect more.
They suck the youth in.
She also didn't call him Usul in his visions in the beginning of the movie.
I think that. Yeah, but I think that goes to like so many characters, so many names. Yeah. He's already all of these things. Yeah. So he's going to be Paul. He's it's a lot for people coming into the movie. I don't know if they'll change that though as we get into the third one or the second movie. If they go on, if they'll add that, or maybe.
I'm sorry. Is there going to be a third, or was that just
rumors?
Okay, here's the thing. So the first movie doesn't even get through the whole first book. There are other books. There's Dune Messiah, and this is what I'm thinking, that they might do the second part to this, and then also do Dune Messiah. And even though I haven't read further, I do know things that happen, and I'm here for Duncan, Idaho. Jason Momoa. I'd be here for it. So if they do that, I'm down.
I mean, I will attempt. I will start in the middle. I'm not starting at the beginning and trying to catch up to get to the middle. And no, not happening. But I will start in the middle and attempt again.
Get those crypt notes and just catch up.
Yeah, that one too.
Okay, so does anybody have any other thoughts on Dune?
I can't stress this enough. I think that the movie should have ended earlier. So Dune the Book is split into 3 different books. There's I think the first one is Dune, the second one's like Messiah, and the third one is Prophet or something like that. And the way. So we already mentioned that the movie ends with him in the knife fight with Jem.
Mm-hmm.
Jameis.
Jameis,
is
thank
like
you.
halfway through the book.
Yeah, and that had nothing to do with his overall character arc. So if the movie, I went on in this discussion with my wife and trying to figure out how this movie could have ended and still told a complete story. And if they ended when he first arrives at the Fremen and just it shows him being saved from the giant worm and then he meets them, that would have been a better ending because everything that comes after that doesn't add anything to the story.
Yeah.
And the 1984 movie took out that fight scene with Jameis.
I'm thinking, did it? Because there's also another version, like a mini series or something. I think I saw that too, where it was in there.
And look, I mean, I think that scene could have worked in part 2. So like it cuts off right when he meets the Fremen, and then it shows him doing the fight scene and being welcomed in, and then it goes to 10 years later or whatever when they're going to cut to wherever part 2 picks up. But I had the line here, and I absolutely hated it, where Zendaya looks at the camera and is like, "This is only the beginning." And then that's there's a lens flare, and then it cuts off right there, and that's how the movie ends. And I thought that was just
because I know, my kids thought that there were going to be more, and then she does that look back. I think she's looking back at Paul, but it's into the camera, telling all of us that this is only the beginning. But she's as she's talking to Paul. But I know that the significance is that it's the first time Paul has never killed anyone, so this is the first time Paul actually kills someone, and it's someone that he doesn't want to kill, and he's actually trying not to, but that's not the way that this goes. This guy's gonna fight you to the death, so even though you've got him, you can make the kill shot. If you don't take it, he's just gonna keep fighting you. So Paul realizes I've got to do this. So I agree, it could have gone at the beginning of the next one. And giving us a better ending. I don't know if they wanted to put a little bit more Zendaya in there. So like we need to stretch this out a little bit. Let's get.
You mean she can't just be in lens flare prophecies?
Or they probably had to justify how much they paid her, like per minute of screen time.
Yeah. And the kids are going to come for you if you don't put her in this movie a little bit more. So, but yeah. I agree. It was a little bit of an awkward. I wasn't ready because I knew the book. I wasn't ready for it to be over. Even though it did feel like it did feel like it was 2 hours. Like when we were watching it, I was like, "Oh, we've been here for a while." So it did feel like it was 2 hours, but also I was ready for more. I was ready for the story to keep going. Yeah, and I think that made it feel like we're going to start getting into living with the Freeman now, and we didn't. It's just like when she said that, I was like, oh, I think that this is the end, and sure enough, that was it. I was like, dang it! And me and all the kids were just like, we want more.
So another change is Dr. Kyne's death from the book to the movie.
I liked her death in the movie.
Me too. Much better.
Yeah, it didn't seem pointless. It felt like she died with a purpose, and she took them out. And I like a good hero death. Give me that.
I mean, I think that the chapter of her death in the book was very interesting because you're in her psyche while she's dying. She's hallucinating. For those who don't know, in the book, she dies. They take off her still suit and put her in the middle of the desert, and so it's a he in the book, but basically dies of dehydration and starts hallucinating. And he thinks he's talking to his father, who's been dead for a long time. So I think it was a very interesting scene, but I do feel like it was a plot device to just get rid of this character. Like this character's no longer useful. Let's get rid of him. Yeah. Where in the movie, it made,
Yep. Totally agree. Yeah, it was definitely, they were like, we're done with this character. Oh, but we actually need to get rid of him now. So, and that, that's more of a tragic death. To just die of dehydration in the middle of a desert. It's more tragic, where the one that we got was more heroic. Like, I know I'm going to die. I know I'm going down, but I'm taking you with me kind of thing. If you're going to get me, I'm going to get you too. So, I already said I like those kind of scenes. Give me a good hero.
Yes.
Hero taking out the bad guys kind of ending. Anything anything else? I feel like there's so much. Like I have like 4 pages of notes, but I feel like it's impossible to really. It's so hard. This is really dense. So maybe if we can convince our DNFers when the next movie comes out.
Finish the book.
Wait, finish or start where the next thing starts?
Either.
We'll skim through the book.
Either you can do
Spark
the
notes.
Spark notes.
I will spark notes up to the beginning of the next movie, and then I will try to actually. I'll even switch from Audible and I'll try to read it.
Yeah, I think I might try to read the actual text. Maybe that'll help.
Yeah, so I tried the audio version first, and I just couldn't get into it, so I just ended up buying the book. That may help.
Yep. Richard, wait. Do I need to finish?
No. This is all when I mention books, that's how Dune divides it within itself. So all of part 1 and part 2 that will be the Dune movies is in theory going to be contained within just Dune. Although they are talking about coming out with Dune Messiah or Children of Dune as a third movie. And that will be the second book. So, but all this is just rumor and theory right now, so we don't actually know until part 2 comes out.
I don't even think that they're filming 2 yet, are they?
I don't think so.
So you guys got plenty of time to decide what you want to read.
To talk myself into this. Maybe if I give myself a reward of like candy or something. I don't know. Speaking of, I want candy right now.
A sweets for every chapter that you get through, and then a big treat if you don't DNF. Like we're going out for ice cream. We did not DNF this time.
It reminds me of
ice cream last night.
Reminds me of a post or something like that. But this parent said, I told my kid I'd give them $1 for every book they finished, and they're finishing like chapter books. And they said that the kid thinks that they're winning by having read 137 books so far. And then the parent was like, "This is the best investment I've ever made."
That is cool.
But the kid thinks they're winning. They're like, "Oh, I'm getting all this money."
All right. So now we know what we need to do for you, Natalie. We got you.
Yeah. I speak in candy. And actually right now I speak in website because I'm still trying to create something.
I can't help you there.
I can help you if it was Wix, but not WordPress. I don't know WordPress.
Yeah. Too bad I didn't go Wix, but I already committed. But now I'm trying to figure out a calendar situation, but that's a conversation offline.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you guys. I'm gonna let everybody do their outros. I've been so curious to see what other people have thought of Dune. So it's been great. Thank you so much. Cause yeah, I try to talk about it some with my husband. He's like, I'm never reading this book. I'm like, okay. He watched the first movie and he liked the second movie. He's like, oh, the second movie's much better. It's just like I said, by the time we watched the 80s version, it was already in the 90s. So we were already a little bit more updated on all the special effects. Even though, I don't know, did they not contact Jim Henson for this? Because some of his stuff really...
Labyrinth. They even, I mean, the puppeteering in Jurassic Park. Okay. Like that movie has held its own. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it becomes World after that because they want it bigger and better.
So much. All right, but I appreciate you guys coming and chatting about this one with me. Again, if you're watching on the replay, leave your thoughts and comments down in the description or below the description box in the chat, and I'd like to hear what everybody thought of it, the parts that we got and what we didn't get, and what you're looking forward to if and when we get more Dune. I'm excited. I'm excited for what's coming next as far as movies. I just don't want to get ahead of myself because even though they say that there's going to be a part 2, I have not heard about any filming yet, which I'm like, why is there no filming?
For me, the bar is just set here. So, I mean, at this point, it just enticed me enough to finish.
Yeah.
Like with words, I don't want to finish. Like, to me, it's like paying for reviews type thing. Like, I don't want to finish just because I'm like, oh, I'll get candy.
Aw,
or a website.
or a website. Not even for a website, Natalie. Come on.
Oh, well, okay, that would be a little more enticing. But then it's also adding more stuff on my plate too.
This is true. This
Be
is
like,
true.
hey, here's your website. Keep up with it if you want people to be interested. Okay.
Yeah. This is interesting. Like, again, I was interested. We've been loving everything that we've been doing so far. So it's like,
I
we
was
can't
happy to
love-
get
we
something.
can't
Like, you
love
almost changed it.
everything.
I was like, I don't
I
know.
was
And you're
like-
like, do we need to change this? I was like, no. We've had every single episode has been, I love this story, or I like at least the story, but not the movie, or something like that.
Mhm.
This one, I was like, rip the Band-Aid off. Come on.
Yep, let's do it. Let's
Hate
do
it.
it. I'm so
Hated
glad.
it. All the memes.
I'm so glad. So some of us loved it, like, mostly. Like, I loved the book at the time. It was the book I needed back in the 90s to just get that sci-fi fantasy creative juices flowing in my brain. It was exactly what I needed. And I love that it sparked so much of what we have now. So I have so much appreciation for Dune. And I think I'm starting to feel in the mood to reread it again. So that's a good thing.
Nostalgia
that-
will do that.
Yeah. Now that I'm understanding why my reading is the way that it is, and the parts that why I don't appreciate some of the parts as much as I used to. Now that I understand that, I think I can go into a reread with a different thought processes and enjoy it a little bit more. So thank you guys so much for coming. Quick outros, starting with Shanon, clockwise around.
Okay. Hi, I'm Shanon. Right under pen name SC Houston. You can find my YouTube channel under the name of SC Houston. I am so very thankful for being invited to come talk today, because I love Dune. Rereading the book, I probably didn't like it as much as I did when I was a kid, but I do like both the movies, and they both have their good points and their bad points, but I like both of them. So, and you can find out more about me on my channel, which is in the description box below.
Awesome.
I am Natalie Locke. Links are down below. You can. I just released a video while we were airing about some channel changes coming up. So if you're interested, watch that, of where you can find me, when you can find me. But don't worry, scripting the book made the cut. I'm still doing this. Yeah. And don't worry, I'm not negative Nancy all the time. I leave that to my sister Nancy. Literally, that's her name.
All right, so I am Morgan Lee. My channel is Morgan Lee. It's linked down in the description box below. I'm streaming today at 1 o'clock with Shanon, Barrett, and Tiffany. So if you want to hang out with us over there, we'll be streaming on my channel at 1. So
What's the time zone for that 1 o'clock?
Central.
Yes.
So in like 40 minutes.
Gotcha.
And I'm Ben Pick. I'm writing to write. I give writing advice. Sorry, I'm Ben Pick. I'm writing to write. I give writing advice every Monday night, and I hope to see you all there. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed both movies. I think the 2021 version would have been better with like a 2-hour director's cut, but overall, I was entertained.
Yes. And I am Nia, the Vixen of Fiction, and I also enjoyed all three for different reasons. Even though the first 84 movie was a little weird, I still watched that mess. I did. I enjoyed it. So I had a great time, and I'm so glad that you guys wanted to hang out and talk with me about it. You can catch me on AuthorTubers React. I've got this scripting the book. We do this twice a month. Most months, there will be some months where we only get to do one because of things that are going on. And if you ever want to join us to talk about something, I post usually at the beginning of the month on my Instagram what we're going to be reading for the following month. So if you're up for reading and watching the things, do that and ask if you can come join us. We'd love to have you. I know that one of the things that we have coming up is Sanditon, which I'm looking forward to. The season is out. I'm watching one episode at a time, and it's making me crazy because I'm so used to being able to just find a day and binge.
I was about to say what willpower, then I realized it's not your willpower.
It is not willpower. If it had all come out, if they'd have dropped it like Netflix does, I would have done just like we did with Bridgerton, and I would have watched it overnight. and been mushed the next day. But Sanditon is coming out one episode at a time. So we will, for the anniversary of when we lost Jane Austen and didn't get to the completed version of Sanditon, we will be talking about Sanditon. And we have some other things. I don't remember all what's on the list, but we got tons and tons of things.
I got the list written down.
Bridgerton's up next.
Yeah, Bridgerton's up next, April 24th. Then for May, we have, because let's just go with the trend of not fully liking the story, but we got Twilight May 15th.
Yes, I'm so excited.
And then May 29th.
I have a hate.
Oh, yeah. May 29th, Devil Wears Prada. And then June is when Sanditon will come into play.
Mm-hmm. So very excited for everything that's coming up. And don't hate us, but some of us are not huge Twilight fans. But if you love Twilight, I love it for you.
Well, I feel like a Twilight is like one or the other. Or it kind of like with me with Dune, where it was like tolerated the movie, hated the book, maybe vice versa.
Yeah, that's how it is for me.
Ooh, watch Bridgerton, Jordan. Watch
Do
it.
it.
It's good. Do it. Do it. And we'll talk about it in 2 weeks on Sunday. So thank you all for coming. Follow everybody. If you're not following everybody who's on this panel, click on their links below and give them a follow. Thank you all so much for coming. Let me find my outro with my cute little Loki, who was so well behaved today. Bye, guys.